What it do, guys? It's D'Anthony here, man, aka Hood Scout, back again for another edition of the Hood Scout podcast. And this is really a unique podcast, a podcast like no other. We're going to have athletes, we're going to have coaches, we're going to have intellectuals, we're going to have media members of all sorts. And don't forget, guys, to like this podcast, share this podcast, and help grow this podcast. This is not just my podcast. This is also your podcast. And the only reason it's going to grow is because you guys are going to be invested in it, guys. Sit back, get your beverage of choice ready, get your popcorn ready, get your dinner ready, get your steak ready, get your vegan meal ready. Tune in, guys. Hood Scout. Peace.
Coach Tucker believes in the development of the holistic student athlete. I know that because he said it. He talks about the 360-degree student athlete on and off the field, and he knows that off the field success is going to directly correlate to on the field success. So with him, he actually says, okay, we have to do these programs and they have to make sense. So that's part of what I focus on, trying to bring things into the fold that do make sense.
At the end of the day, what we always want you all to do is know about opportunities that are out there.
Hey, what it do, guys? What it do? Welcome back to another edition of the Hood Scout podcast. Today, like I always say what I mean, I got another great guest, a young man that's rising in his profession. And without further ado, Coach, tell the people who you are and where you from.
How's everybody doing? Thanks for having me on, first and foremost. Name is Darien Harris, Director of Player Relations and Program Advancement of Michigan State Football. Originally born in Washington, D.C., raised in Silver Spring, Maryland. Went to the Math Catholic High School on the East Coast. Before coming to Michigan State to be a student athlete, and now back home in East Lansing, working under Mel Tucker with the football program.
The coach, y'all are. I always like to chop it up and start at the beginning, which I'm gonna do that right now. But I just gotta say, y'all are building this thing like this is outside of view, like a Fortune 500 company. I see the videos, I see the staff, I see the meetings. I'm like, y'all are building that thing. I want to start at the beginning, but just speaking to a little bit of what y'all building, like it seems very big in scope.
It is. I mean, Coach Tucker's a visionary. He is somebody that is dialed in with how to take a program from year one, which he's been a part of in a lot of different places, to a championship caliber program. So he is, of course, our CEO. And from that, we've been able to really build out the program, build out this organization in a way that first and foremost benefits the student athletes, allows them to have an unforgettable experience as a Spartan, become a Spartan dog for life, as we love to say, but also encapsulates everything that the university has to offer, everything that Michigan State stands for, bringing in, of course, our fan base, our alumni base, the rest of our college, the academia side of things, into this big conglomerate that is Michigan State football, which leads to, again, a lot of the success that you've seen from our program, both on and off the field. So it's been a pleasure and a dream come true for me to be a part of it, going from being a student athlete in Michigan State, being a football player here, to now coming full circle, being able to now service the current student athletes that we have.
And I want, as we go through this interview, I want to pick at that because that's just really impressive. But like I said, I got to start at the beginning to know who you are. Talk to me about your journey. How was it growing up? What was that family life and that first introduction into ball for you?
Yeah, for sure. I was blessed and fortunate to have both my parents, and they pushed me to be great, but they allowed me to carve my own path. So, my dad played collegiately at Virginia Tech, so he knew the way that the recruiting process goes and, what it takes to get to this level. My mom is currently a lawyer at the Department of Education, went to William & Mary for undergrad and Penn for law school. My younger brother is recently graduated from Yale and went a different direction away from sports, more to the theater side of things. So, my family, we all pushed each other to just carve out our own path. I kind of infamously tried to go out there and play football as a second grader and ran off the field crying because I said this wasn't for me. Rediscovered it when I was 11 in sixth grade. Kind of just started to get a little bit better in seventh grade, and by eighth grade I took off. Had opportunity again to play at the Math Catholic High School in Hyattsville, Maryland. Pretty big powerhouse in terms of the landscape of high school athletics. Was able to, again, have a good career there, got recruited, fell in love with everything Michigan State had to offer, and that landed me in East Lansing. And then from there, wanted to, of course, choose a school that was going to be high on the academic side as well as the athletic side, and Michigan State was the best fit for me. Graduated undergrad in journalism. Was able to play 4 years in Michigan State. Started for 2, was a captain my senior year. Was able to win 2 Big Ten titles, play in the college football playoffs, win a Rose Bowl. Did everything I wanted to do at a collegiate level. Got an opportunity with the Cincinnati Bengals after that. Then went to the CFL for a couple years, tore my hamstring 2 years in a row, and that's when I decided, all right, it's time to be done playing. I was trying to move on to what's next. So I think, as we know, that's a hard transition to make, but it was a decision that I knew I had to make at that time.
We got to pick at that, Coach, because you said a whole lot in a very short period of time. Now, what is it like growing up in that Maryland area? I'm a kid from Texas, so really Dallas specifically, so it's kind of a big city. Is Maryland kind of is that like a city area? Is more like country area? What's the demographics? Not the racial demographics, but demographics in general.
Yeah, definitely more city. We
Okay.
call it DMV, so DC, Maryland, Virginia. It's kind of all encompassed to one big area. So definitely, you think Washington DC, pretty big city. Silver Spring, Maryland was more of a suburb, with a downtown area. But when you start branching out and basically the way that my high school conference was, kind of the way that is shaped, everybody from every school in the conference was pretty much really close. So, you may be going city to city, place to place, to hang out and do different things. So it felt pretty big. It felt pretty big. So I always say that I'm from the big city. Is how I felt. Coming to East Lansing, which is more of a college town. It was actually kind of a slower pace than it was for me, I'd say, growing up.
Talk to me a little bit about this, Coach. What lessons did you learn in high school, and what was that recruiting process like when you were making that journey to Michigan State? Were there other schools looking at you? What drew you specifically to Michigan State?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say lessons I learned, coming from my high school specifically was lessons in patience. I think, a lot of times, and especially when you're, a good athlete or really in any field, you want things right away. And I think that the beauty of going to a school like DeMatha is it has a college feel. Everybody's good. It's a private Catholic school, so they can recruit. So I was recruited out of 8th grade to go there, which means that so was everybody else, pretty much. So you're not going to walk through the door and then be a starter on varsity as a freshman. Matter of fact, we weren't even allowed to play varsity as freshmen or JV. We had to play on the freshman team as freshmen. And then, as a sophomore, I was able to jump to varsity, but I was I rode the bench, for the majority of my sophomore year, playing in spot duty or playing when we were up by a lot of points. And again, when you think of especially Power 5 Division I players, usually they're on varsity as freshmen and they're starting by their sophomore year. So I became a starter my junior year. Actually lost my spot after the first couple games, had to earn it back. And then that kind of propelled me into my senior year, where I actually ended up only playing offense and no defense. Ironically, even though I played linebacker in college and in the pros. So
was you a running back?
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this. Stop the real quick, Coach. What is that? And because I know Cali, and see, this is a fascinating. Down here in Texas, private schools are not really the thing.
Right.
It's all public, even though the public schools do recruit locally, though nobody wants to admit it. But I know East Coast, especially California, is private. How does that work as far as that recruiting? Do you get like a letter? Do you get something saying you're accepted into the school? How does that work?
Yeah, so we basically go on recruiting visits. They're called shadow visits. So they pair you up with somebody at the school, usually another football player, and you go around and shadow them for a day. So I shadowed at a few schools in the conference, WCAC conference, and essentially, if they're recruiting you to get in there, you're pretty much going to get in. Now there are some academic qualifications you have to meet, especially at a place like DeMatha. It is a high level academic school, but yeah, I mean, I think once you decide to go, then it's just the application process, and they declare that you've been accepted. But yeah, for me, 8th grade, I had a pretty big game. 250, 300-yard rushing game against a team that had a coach who actually also coached at DeMatha. And so that's how I kind of got on their radar. And then from there, it kind of went from there. I didn't have DeMatha or any private school on my radar prior to that. I was going to go the public school route, stay locally, go where my friends were going, because I was public school from preschool to through eighth grade, and so there's definitely it's benefits to going, but also I think that there's also some disadvantages with not staying the route of going to public school. And I always say you can get recruited from everywhere. You don't have to go to a powerhouse to get recruited. If you're good, they're going to find you.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Good stuff. I'm loving this so far. So let's talk about that recruitment to Michigan State. Coming out as a high schooler.
Yeah, so my first offer was actually as a sophomore. Before I'd even really played, I went to campus Syracuse, and I guess I performed well enough to get an offer. So, the thing about recruiting, and I think a lot of high school kids now could probably attest to this. Every time you get a new offer, you say you're going to that school because you're just so excited. So, I was like, all right, I'm going to Syracuse, and let's shut it down now. And so like, there's going to be more coming. Let's just slow down. So by the time my junior year ended, got the film out there, and there was no huddle back in the day. It was all YouTube was how we got film around, and I'm sure even that was kind of new to the fold, even though it wasn't that long ago. Some offers started rolling in. So Illinois, Kansas, Purdue, Vanderbilt, Central Florida, Duke, Virginia, Michigan State, of course. And so then I kind of narrow it down, went on some visits, unofficial visits, and kind of came down to Michigan State and Duke, just based on the academic prowess. Again, that's really big for my family, and wanted to go to somewhere that met both of those, qualifications in our eyes. And when it came down to it, Michigan State, from everything they had to offer from the, of course, the academic standpoint, high-level football play in the Big Ten, the family atmosphere, the brotherhood, the camaraderie, and what they were building under Coach D'Antonio. They hadn't won a championship yet under Coach D, but we could see that it was building. So we all, in my class, which ended up being the winningest senior class of all time, still is, we committed off of opportunity to do something great at Michigan State, which ultimately we were able to do.
What were and it's very fascinating with this education piece, because you think of Duke as a very academic school. I'm not sure their record back then. I know they kind of fluctuate. What were you specifically looking for as a young man coming out of high school? Was it just academics, or were there some other things as well?
Well, obviously, it was an opportunity to play in the National Football League. That was the ultimate dream. But again, we wanted to be multiple. We wanted to be able to make sure that I got the full collegiate experience, which of course included getting a high level degree, networking, creating a ecosystem of folks that I could always lean on, both within the football program and outside of it. And Duke had all of that for sure. What Coach Cutcliffe was building down there was excellent. A classmate of mine in DeMatha, Quinn Cook, was headed down there to play basketball, of course, and ultimately ended up in the championship winner as a captain down at Duke. So, they of course were building something really strong there. I just felt a connection on to Michigan State, and mainly just for the players that were on the current team. That's back then, 2010, 2011, that's what it was about. You're committing off of the fact of your education, opportunity to make the National Football League, be developed as a football player and as a man, and then create a network. Nowadays recruiting has added a lot of variables and pieces to it, which is no problem. But again, that wasn't the case back then. There weren't photo shoots, and we didn't have Lamborghinis and Bentleys and goats on the field for visits. You went to one restaurant and you just kicked it with the guys, and it's their job to recruit you, and that's what they were able to do.
How old are you, Coach? In your early 30s?
29.
Okay, so we're around the same age. I'm 30. So let's keep this thing flowing. You get to Michigan State. I always ask guys this too, man. What was that big difference from that? Even though you went to a powerhouse, what was that big difference from that college, that high school level, to get into university? What was some of those things stand out right away?
For me, it was honestly, on a school side of things, DeMatha was actually harder, and that's what everybody said at DeMatha coming back. They're like,
Wow.
math is going to be harder academically than college. That's what they set it up. And that ended up being true. Not that Michigan State was easy by any means. And when I went back to grad school, that was difficult as well. But the academic piece, I was ready for that. The football side of things, my first full workout with the team, and they break up big skill, power to run and stuff like that. I looked over and there was quarterbacks bigger than me. And they were kind of looking like, aren't you supposed to be running with the skills? You must be a DB. And I'm like, no, I'm a linebacker. And they were like, oh, you got a long way to go. And that was like my wake up call to be like, okay, I'm used to being from, from preschool to 8th grade. I was always the biggest kid in school by far. Then once you hit high school, everyone's kind of caught up. The linemen were bigger, of course, like that. But I was still, big for a running back, big for a linebacker, got to Michigan State at 205 pounds. And it's like, now that's not going to cut it, man. Our starting middle linebacker is 6'3", 240. You're going to have to put on some weight here to keep up. And then I went through my first fall camp without making a tackle, period. No, didn't make a tackle. And so, again, it was eye-opening because you go from being in a school like DeMatha, you go from first team all conference, a high-level player, of course, number 10 ranked player in the state, to you feel like you don't belong, like you can't hang at all.
Let me ask you this, Coach. Was that a mental drag for you?
I think that because of the blessing that I had with my parents being realists, it didn't weigh on me that much. A little bit, of course, you'd be lying if you said it didn't a little bit. You kind of start thinking, not so much do I belong, but more so I got a long way to go. But, my dad was always like, listen, man, you look at the roster and look at the guys that are in front of you. And I'm not saying don't go compete, but I'm also saying don't be calling home because you're not playing, like we're not, you got to go earn this. It might take you 2 to 3 years, to be honest. Again, you just got to look at you got to be realistic. And he said, you may break through early. That could happen. But you got to control what you can control. You can control how in shape you are, be the best, most conditioned person on the team. You can control what you're doing in this classroom. You can control how much you know the playbook. And everything else will take care of itself. So I think that because I had that in the back of my head, I didn't have family that were like, why aren't you playing yet? Stuff like that. My dad was like, I'm going to be at every game, whether you playing or not. And having that level of support, that helps. And so I always hope that young folks have that level of support because there's a lot of pressure put on these kids nowadays. They got their whole generation riding on them. And to an extent, that's not fair, because you just don't understand, like, when you make that jump from high school to college, it's not just that everybody's good. It's that everybody's really good and some are great. And you probably just aren't there yet, but you'll get there.
Man, this is good stuff, Coach. I love that. And I love that you had that support system, a father that played D1 ball, a mom that was educated, because what I've come to find out, a lot of guys is that, now I ain't gonna say a lot, but some, when they go to college and they graduate specifically, they're the first one to graduate.
No doubt.
And whatnot. So you get to Michigan State, like I said, the most winningest class. What did it feel like winning, man? Walk me through some of those big team accomplishments you guys were able to achieve down there.
Yeah, it was special. It really kicked off for us in 2013. 2011 was a big year for us. That was Kirk Cousins' senior year. And he took us to the Big Ten title game. That was all of my class. 25 out of 26 of us redshirted. So we didn't also have to worry about, half the class is playing, half the class ain't. Only one player, my roommate, Tawan Jones, played, and he was somebody that came through the door 6'3", 240. You knew he was playing, right away. But, we got to watch and learn from somebody like Kirk and B.J. Cunningham and Keith Nickel and Trenton Robinson and the guys that were leading those teams, Keyshawn Martin. They took us all the way to the inaugural Big Ten championship game. We played Russell Wilson in Wisconsin. Came up literally just an inch short in that game, but we're able to go into the Outback Bowl and beat Georgia. So that was the first taste of, okay, we got something rolling here. Then went to 2012 with what we thought was an even better team. Le'Veon Bell is in the backfield rolling. Our defense is great. And we end up going 7-6. Lost, I think, 5 games by a total of 13 points. So we're losing games by 1, 2, 3 points. And then going into 13, that senior class led by Darqueze Dennard, who was unanimous All-American, won the Thorpe, still with the 49ers now, and all the leaders on that team, they said this is going to be the year that we win the Rose Bowl, because that was the big – there's no playoffs yet. Mm-hmm. So the big thing for Michigan State, the Big Ten, is you win the Rose Bowl. National championship, of course, but you win the Rose Bowl. And Coach D, he took a trip to Cali, and he recorded a video for us at the Rose Bowl saying, "You will be the ones." And then it was only showed to us. So fast forward to the end of the season, we end up beating Stanford. We end up beating Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. We beat Stanford in the Rose Bowl. We went 13-1 that year. We all still say if there was a playoffs that year, we would have been national champions. I have no doubt we were the best team in the country that year. Only game we lost was against Notre Dame, and there were some bogus pass interference calls in that game, to say the least. That film, but that was a game where we beat the school down the road pretty handily, and that was a -48 rushing yards game as a defense. And beating Ohio State, who was undefeated in the Big Ten championship game, and then actually winning the Rose Bowl, which I was fortunate enough to be. Make the game-winning tackle in the Rose Bowl as a sophomore. That then propelled us to go bananas for the next couple years. So, 2014 went 12-2 and won the Cotton Bowl against Baylor. The only 2 losses that year were against Oregon and Ohio State, who played in the national championship that year. And we had fourth quarter leads in both of those games. And then 2015, my senior year, won the Big Ten again and played Alabama in the college football playoffs. And it came up short there, but just to make it was a big accomplishment. So my last 3 years, we went 36-5 over that 3-year span and finished in the top 5 every single year. So to go out, on top, to go out a Big Ten champion as a captain as well, it's just special. So we won 43 games as a class, which is the most all time and still is the most all time.
That's big, Coach. You said a whole lot right there. But I want to ask you a few questions within that. What stands out about the guys that go on to have, let's say, NFL careers? So you got Kirk Cousins, you got Le'Veon Bell. Talk to me about that. And then who was on that Ohio State team back then? Because, those guys are usually pretty loaded. Who do you remember on the play, on that team?
Yeah, the guys that are in the league now, that are still in the league, just their resiliency and their ability, shine through in college, and it's shining through now. Kirk Cousins was the first NFL player ever to sign a fully guaranteed deal. It's special having somebody like that come from Michigan State. Obviously, Le'Veon Bell, what he did in his days, especially in Pittsburgh, he's the best running back in the league. It was undeniable. Will Golston, Super Bowl champ going into year 10. In Tampa Bay. Brian Allen still in the league now, just won a Super Bowl last year as the starting center, for Matt Stafford and the Rams. Darqueze Dennard going into the year, I believe, 8 for him now with the 49ers. Tabor Peppers, a starting long snapper for the 49ers. It just goes on and on. Trey Waynes, he was my roommate. He just retired after a 7-year career, as a first-round pick. Jack Conklin's was all pro as a rookie. First team rookie, and was a member of my teams as well. So just to be able to watch those guys, that's why I love right now really not having a team I specifically root for. I just watch my guys, and to know so many of these guys that are having these stellar careers, and to know the relationship that we all have is special. It really is. Those Ohio State teams were loaded. 2013 was Braxton Miller at quarterback. Carlos Hyde was at running back. Brian Shazier at linebacker. 14 was JT Barrett. Ezekiel Elliott burst on the scene that year. Braxton was still there. Michael Thomas, and then their loaded defense. 15 when we beat them at Ohio State. They had 36 draft picks on that team. JT Barrett, Ezekiel Elliott, Michael Thomas again. Joey Bosa, Darren Lee, Joshua Perry. I believe Malik Hooker was on that team. Like I mean, every position they had was pretty much a drafted player. It was unreal the talent they had.
Let me stop you real quick, Coach. What do? And I've asked. I guess I talked to so many different guys. I forget who, but I asked somebody, what is it about and y'all are building? I believe y'all are building a program where you're going to have this type of talent. But what is it specifically about those good teams that stand out? Is it just talent? Is it size? Is it speed? Because you said even y'all played Alabama. What is it about those teams that really stand out from a standpoint of you being on the field with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the size and the speed is definitely there. You know, that's what we ran into with Alabama in 15. Was just, you know, it was size and speed. You know, outmatched at certain positions, and that can happen. It is what it is. You know, and we did our, you know, we did what we could. And I don't think the score of that game was indicative of the entire game. I think we held our own really well, but you know, sometimes you're just a little overmatched. But also, you know, the discipline and then the leadership, you can't overlook those intangibles as well. So that's why, of course, recruiting is so big, obviously in collegiate sports, but that's why it is the lifeblood of your program. You cannot coach bad players to play good. You just can't do it. And as we say here, good players make you a good coach. Great players make you a great coach. You have to get great players into your program, and so that's why recruiting is what every program pours the most resources into, because it's that next level of folks coming in that's going to be the benefactors of your program.
Yeah. We're going to talk about, we're about 28 minutes in. We're going to talk about that post career, which is what I really want to get into, but I had to lead it up and frame it right. But before we do that, what stood out about Coach D? Any little lessons about him?
Oh man, yeah, just an unbelievable man. You know, somebody I still talk to frequently. Just he cared about his people. You know, he always used to say, he's like, I want to walk amongst the people. I want to be amongst the people. So he's somebody that you can always take a lot of nuggets from and pour into your life now. You know, he used to show us, you know, video on the blue vase, which just basically means, you know, without going into the whole story of that, get it done by any means possible. He used to always tell us to be a light, you know, to be able to be a light to others. Complete your circles. That's something he got from his father. You know, it just means finish what you started. So, you know, those lessons that he taught us, I mean, that's how I live my life, is based on lessons I learned from Coach D'Antonio. I still have my gold card from when we played Ohio State in 2015. It's still in my car.
What's the gold card, Coach?
So we used to do goal cards every week leading to the game. So you would write down your 5 goals for the week. They could be life related, football related, academic related, whatever you needed for that week to get you through. So I play in Ohio State in 2015 without our quarterback, you know, without our superstar quarterback, and against a juggernaut on their senior day in Columbus in the shoe. For us to win that game, I was like, I got to keep this gold card for the rest of my life. So it just sits in my car, something I look at every day. And, you know, and the first thing on there that I have is be a light. And that's something that he'll still tell us to this day. You know, when we're at a community function or anything like that, he was like, you were a light for these people today. So he's just a great man, you know, and what a career, you know, all-time winningest coach in Michigan State history. What he did at MSU is, I mean, he deserves to have a statue built of him for sure. And just to have the opportunity to have played under Coach D'Antonio and now work under Coach Tucker, it is no two better men in the ranks of college sports.
Yeah, I agree with that. He really kind of, to me, changed that program around. Now let's post-career, Coach, and I really want to lead up to where you are now, man. But how did you post-football career, or after college, should I say, how did you lead up to now? I know you got that master's degree, but let's kind of ease into that phase, because I'm really fascinated about that.
Yeah, you know, it's I always had it in my head, you know, I don't want to be the former player that is lost, you know.
Yeah.
And it's tough because you're always going to go through that identity crisis.
Yep.
where it's not so much that you see yourself as only a football player, it's people see you as a football player. So every time you run into somebody, and I told my freshman this last week, and it happened to me again a couple of days ago. anytime you run into somebody, they're going to ask you about the times where you suited up in whatever colors that they rooted for. So for me, everybody asks about the Rose Bowl. That's all anybody ever wants to talk about.
Wow.
And it's not more difficult to have a conversation if you don't have something else going for you. Yeah. So if you are stuck trying to figure out what's next and people only affiliate you with what has been, it makes it really difficult to move on because you're like, is this all that anybody's ever going to see me as? Whereas if you're at a point where you're like you've moved on, you've started a new career in something else, you're building something new, you can have those conversations about the past, but you also know that I'm at the end of the day, I may have made that person's day by talking to them, and now I can go home to what I got that makes my day. But if you don't have anything else that makes your day, they're going home happy they talked to you, and you're standing there like, that's really all you wanted from me? You know, I'm sitting here, I need some help, and all you want to do is ask me about a play I made 9 years ago. You know what I mean?
That's good stuff.
So, it is.
And to me, coach, not to cut you off, but to me, coach, that's one of the value of trying to get an education or knowing a little bit something, maybe what you want to do outside of ball, so you're not just one dimensional. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I'm in the role I'm in now. You know, that was the main reason I wanted to be in this role, is to not so much, you know, I don't want to harp on the percentages of people that make it pro and don't and all of that. I just say everything's the same. It's all one track of success. So we should be creating your holistic experience at Michigan State so that you aspire to play National Football League, leave with 2 degrees, get in the community and build your network and build your brand and have success with NIL all at the same time. You don't have to pick one or the other, you know? And I think that we get stuck into that because all of these kids coming in, they've all heard that 99% of you all aren't going to make it to the NFL, get your degree, this and that. And they're like, I'm not one of those 99%, you know? Yeah. So if you start talking to them about that and you keep hitting them with, well, only 1% in this room is going to make it, they're going to be looking around like, sucks for you all, but I ain't that 1%. I'm going to make it. So you got to talk to them a certain way. You got to say, we know you're going to make it, but that doesn't mean you still don't need to do all those other things.
Now, coach, you got that master's degree, which I mean, and when I harp on that, to me, those type of things are really big, you know, because you guys are more than athletes. You know, LeBron said it all the time, and I think that's true. You get that master's degree, and then you come back to Michigan State. How did that happen? And then walk me through that transition back to Michigan State from on the personnel side, and we'll eat at that a little bit, then we'll wrap it up in a few minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't immediate. From coming back full time, it was immediate to come back and get my master's degree. You know, I felt like why waste time in the off season, you know, only training when there's all this time to do something else. So immediately, you know, when I knew it was coming to an end with Cincinnati, I went to my academic advisor from when I was at Michigan State and said, hey, can I be a graduate assistant in academics in the off season? I'm still playing ball, but can I be a grad assistant in the off season? And can I, and then I went to the master's program and said, can I only do this in the spring semester? I'm sure neither have probably been done before, but I don't want to waste this time. And I know ultimately I want to learn this side of the business for when I'm done playing, and I want to earn my master's degree. Fortunately, both of them agreed. And so I was actually a GA while still being a professional athlete, which I'm not sure if that's before. But I felt like, you know, from January to May, what are you doing besides training? You know, you're not training 12 hours a day. So there's plenty of time to go to class, get your studying done, and train. And then at this point, I'm in the CFL now. So the way the CFL works, you leave in May and then go up, you play June and November, and then you're back home. So it worked perfectly in terms of being a GA in the spring semester. So I did that for 2 years, 2017, 2018, when I finally, you know, tore my hamstring for the second year in a row on the same day of camp doing the same drill. I was like, okay, this is God telling me you're done. You got to move to something else, or else it's going to keep happening.
Let me ask you this, Coach. What did, because I don't want to gloss over this. I'm glad you mentioned it. What did you learn from the NFL, even if it was a short, brief period? Yeah. What was that experience like for you?
It was a great experience, you know, just to have made it, to be able to say I put on an NFL jersey. But you know, it's a business, and I think at that point you really start to learn a lot about yourself. You learn about, you know, how resilient are you going to be, and are you going to let circumstances that are out of your control, you know, kind of determine your fate. You know, so for me going to Cincinnati, you know, I thought I played well enough to stick around and to have a 10-year career, but it didn't work out that way. And then the goal was to go up to the CFL for 2 years and come back, be in the NFL again, and I had a great experience in the CFL too, living in another country, almost learning another culture, met some great folks up there as well. But again, sometimes things don't work out like you think they are, because it's not your plan. It's not your plan at the end of the day. And my plan was not ultimately, what I learned was not to be a 10-year NFL player. My plan was to find my way back to Michigan State to help this next generation of student athletes. Once I was locked on that and accepted it, made it easier to transition.
When I walk me back through that first introduction back to Michigan State as a, on that personnel side of things, and what was that call like? What was that process like?
Yeah, it was unexpected. I was working for Quicken Loans, now Rocket Mortgage at the time. I had just finished a year at Big B Coffee, which it's a local coffee chain that's a competitor to Starbucks in marketing. I was also.
Did you hate it?
No, I didn't at all. I actually
some guys, coaches and stuff that like high school coaches, they say, "Man, I work corporate and I did not like it. I had to get into coaching."
No, I enjoyed learning the business of just business in general. It was a good experience. For a long term, 30, 40 years, I don't know. I think if I didn't get back into sports, I would have, entrepreneur or something, shifted to something else. And also at the time I was coaching high school ball, I was coaching high school development as well. So I was still had my fix of football, but it wasn't to this level. And I didn't really have I had my eye kind of from a distance on getting back to Michigan State. But with college athletics, there's just so few spots.
Yep.
And so there just wasn't anything available from a full-time standpoint in Michigan State when I finished my master's, when I was done as a GA. And so had to get a job. I was working Big B and doing a GA and doing my master's at the time because football was done that last couple semesters of my master's. And I was just going to stick with that. Ended up moving to downtown Detroit and got a role at Quicken Loans, now Rocket Mortgage, and was there for a month. And then all of a sudden, Coach D retires, and we didn't know what was coming. Yeah. So Coach D retires. I get a call from the athletic department, not about a job, but just about kind of trying to get a sense of what former players are looking for in a new coach. So I gave my in as somebody to represent kind of my era, and again, didn't really think anything of it. A day went by. And then I was like, you know what, maybe this is an opportunity for me. So at the time they were narrowing down the search, I ended up calling back saying, hey, I'm ready to come home if it works out. Long story short, Coach Tucker gets hired. I end up in East Lansing for a different event. And athletic director, who now the athletic director, deputy athletic director at the time, Alan Haller, he says, why don't you go over to the weight room and meet Coach Tucker? Because he's touring the weight room as our new coach. So I go over there and meet him for the first time in my life. And this is on like a Friday, Saturday. He says he needs help with everything off the field. And by midweek that next week, I'm signing hiring papers while telling Quicken Loans, I'm sorry, I know it's been a month professional, but I got to go take my dream job. So it really was like a week turnaround from having no idea that this role was going to even be available to deciding, planning my move back to East Lansing.
Now, Coach, talk about, you don't have to talk about me tucking in this particular part, but talk about how you guys building this thing. And I know when I did a little reading on you, I feel like you had a few different job titles at Michigan State, right? On the personnel side.
Sorry.
I said I was doing a little reading on you. I said, did you have a few different job titles on the personnel side, like since you've been back?
Yeah. So this is I'm on my.
So kind of walk through those titles a little bit and just walk through what you guys are building. Like I said, because on the outside, man, I'm just so fascinated with the scope, man. It's like I don't want to disrespect Coach D, but it's like going from a smaller plane to a big jet, man. And I'm just interested in how you guys are building this thing.
Yeah, so came in director of player engagement. My main role is just going to be player development. All the off-field programs for the players, and it's grown now to where I am now as director of player relations and program advancement, where I'm still running player development, but also doing alumni engagement, university, community outreach, and then some brand strategy as well. as well as kind of overseeing and the education, NIL education for our football players. So, we're growing a pretty comprehensive machine under Coach Tucker, again, because he's bought into everything that has to do with the current landscape of college athletics, the branding piece, the NIL side of things, the marketing piece, the development side, alumni, all of those things. So, a lot of his big things he just brought to life. For example, player development side of things. He was like, we need the most comprehensive financial literacy program in the country. So now instead of us doing something once a year, we do something 5 weeks. We actually have our final session of that tomorrow. From an alumni standpoint, he said alumni, former players are the backbone of our program. So we're running what I dub Spartan Dog Con. We're doing that for the second year in a row coming up this weekend. We have 170 former players coming in for the weekend, Friday, Saturday, to actually get programming. So that they're going to hang out. We're going to have a good time, but they're going to get strength and conditioning, health and wellness sessions. They're going to get a session on sleep. They're going to get a session on fatherhood, faith, family, faith, leadership, and legacy. And so, making sure we're pouring into our former players. And then from a creative standpoint, making sure our brand is strong, making sure we're diving in different things, the metaverse, 3D, virtual reality, all these crazy things that are people are talking about right now. We're tapping into it. So I get to hit a lot of different initiatives, which is what makes my job a lot of fun. For me, it doesn't feel like work. It's really a pleasure.
Now, Coach, how is, like, what's this brain trust like? Do you guys got a group of 10, group of 15, a group of 20? And then also, I'm a nerd, man, so I love this stuff that a lot of people probably don't think is interesting. I love it. Then how do you guys, what's that meeting process like? Are you meeting, 2 or 3 meetings a day? Talk to me a little bit about that, and talk to me about Coach Tucker's philosophy as well.
Yeah, so I'd say from a kind of what we call mission control standpoint, it is not that big of a team. We have a general manager, Saeed Khalif, he's our GM, an executive director of player personnel. He really runs the day-to-day operations of the office. I'm meeting him multiple times a day on all of these initiatives. When it comes to player development and alumni engagement, I get to work alongside Dr. Lorenzo Guess. He also works in the weight room as our associate head strength and conditioning coach. So I get to work with him on the player development side of things, pulling programs together and things of that nature, and then working with our creative team and the other folks we bring in from a consultant standpoint when it comes to brand and brand strategy in conjunction with the athletic department. So, yeah, the brain trust, I would say, really is actually honestly not that big. I would say it's upwards of, on a day-to-day basis, probably really no more than 5 people that are really making the decisions and putting things into action. And Coach Tucker likes it that way for now. Keep a tight knit circle so that things can get done at light speed. He loves to move fast, and I think it's just a lot more efficient if it's a lot less people to get things done at a faster rate. It's more we have to do on an individual basis, but we're able to get it done at the pace that he wants to move it.
What is Michigan State? You guys did something. I don't know if it was, I don't want to say it's agriculture. You guys did something, Coach, that kind of blew me away. What is Michigan State known for, Coach, on the academic side of things?
Yeah, so definitely agriculture school. It's the largest land grant college in the country, meaning that it's the largest country that gives opportunities to all in the country. Yeah, definitely from an agricultural standpoint, it used to be the Michigan Agricultural College, MAC. Was a former name of the school. We're number 1 in secondary education. Our business college is top notch. We're number 1 in packaging engineering, and number 1 in supply chain. And the master's program I graduated from, marketing research, number 1 marketing research program in the country as well. So, top 100, university in the world. And really, we have a lot of opportunities, from what we like to say anthropology to zoology. You can do it all here at Michigan State. And we present those options to our players as well. I think that's one thing that separates us also. And not to say that all schools do this, but we don't slap 3 to 5 majors down and say, you got to pick from these. We say, you tell us what you want to major in and we'll make it happen for you. So our student athletes have an opportunity to really explore what they're interested in.
Now, Coach, we're gonna get ready to wrap it up, but I'm loving this, man. Like I said, I'm a nerd, so I'm picking your brain. So I hope you got a few more minutes for me.
Absolutely.
Um, two things too. I seen the I think the road with the expensive car on the field, Coach. I seen the
Yeah.
goat on the field. I seen. In fact, I'm gonna tell you something, Coach. Now, and this is not blowing smoke. I think you guys have the greatest marketing team currently in college football. I mean, but talk. So the question I'm asking, who is kind of over some of those ideas? Because I think they're very creative. And
Yeah.
then, what areas do you guys want to recruit? Or is this a national thing? Is this a Detroit local thing? Is this an Ohio thing? Talk to me a little bit about that. And then third, if you can remember all these questions, speak to me about that trip y'all did down there to Alabama.
Yeah. So from a recruiting standpoint, we're nationally recruiting. We're
Okay.
nationally recruiting. Of course, we take care of home and want to pull a lot out of the state of Michigan, but we're on a national scale recruiting. There's nowhere we won't go, and there's nowhere we won't find great players at. Yeah, I'd say from that marketing standpoint, honestly, it starts with Coach Tucker. He has big visions, and then he, tells us, and we go execute them. So, the cars, the goats, that comes from Tuck. And of course,
Wow.
there's a lot that Saeed or myself will bring to the table, and we'll find ways to build our brand and put it out there. And it shows up. You can see throughout the month of June, we're second in Twitter impressions in the entire country, fourth overall on social media. Second year in a row, we were top 5
Wow.
during the month of June. So it's definitely working. There's eyeballs on Michigan State for sure, for sure.
Yep.
And we're just going to continue to build. Good, bad, or indifferent from a public persona. We're having fun. The recruits have fun when they come on these visits. The families have fun, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day. And then the trip to down to Alabama. I wasn't able to attend that. It was my daughter's first birthday party was that Saturday.
Okay.
But just hearing the recap from our players that went, they said it was a life-changing experience. Coach Tucker was the only head coach in the conference that went. And I think that speaks volumes,
That does.
to have a head football coach there, and to have him be able to reflect on that experience, especially as a black man in this country and as a black coach, and we know how few there are. It's just special. And so, I'm thankful to Dr. Ashley Baker, who's our Chief of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in our athletic department, for helping to pull that trip together with the Big Ten and inviting us to be a part of it. I'd gone down to Atlanta for the NIL summit, and then previously to Houston for the Black Student Athlete this summer. So she was a big piece of that, as well as we now have representation at these events also. So I'm really looking forward to hopefully joining next year on that trip. We're going to have some recaps put out there and things like that. But it was life-changing for our student athletes, just hearing them recap it, coming back, for Spencer, Malik, and Trey that went down there from a football standpoint. And again, Coach Tucker being the only head coach that went, that's profound. It's profound.
It is. And it kind of speaks to the cultural aspect of what you're building because, we're in a time now where everybody can be social justice warriors, but those who are walking the walk, to me, they're what separate themselves from the others who are just saying different things.
No
I'm going to
doubt.
get ready to wrap it up, Coach. NAL is a big deal, and I don't want to necessarily dive into it, but how is it from a college perspective on the donations and getting people to give? How does that work? I don't know if you know about it, but how does that type of stuff work at the college level? Do you know about that?
Yeah, I mean, you got to be a excellent fundraiser as you are a recruiter, as a coach, and Coach Tucker certainly is that. So we have an extensive donor relations team, Spartan Fund, within our athletic department, and pretty much everything that runs, our program, the athletic department is through fundraising, through development, and whether it's building a new facility, which we're in the middle of doing right now.
What are y'all building, Coach? You can't just drop that on me like that.
Yeah, man. So it's keeping up with the Joneses. So we're under construction right now, building an entire new football facility, adding on to what we have now, and it's going to be done next summer. It's going to be the Tom Izzo football building, ironically, named after our basketball coach.
Basketball coach.
Yep, it's gonna be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Wow.
development is huge, for the entire athletic department, and our donors are diehard Spartans and in it for the long run. Coach Tucker has come in and been a masterful fundraiser as well, and we're reaping the benefits for sure.
So what do you think those donors want to see the program in the sense of, because I had a guy from a good brother from Minnesota talking about that also worked in fundraising at his time at Minnesota. Like, what does those donors want? Is it a relationship? Is it access to the program? What do they want to see that kind of can compel them to give?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first and foremost, they want to see success on the field and off the field. So they want to see student athletes graduating, and they want to see wins, and they want to see championships won. And then, on a personal, individual level, access, of course, which they get, whether it's through suites, coming on trips to games, tickets, access to the field, full game passes, all those types of things. It's all packaged and tiered and all of that. But I think first and foremost, especially in Michigan State, with the generosity that we have from our donors, it's just about the success of the student athletes on and off the field. So they know that they're creating better leaders of tomorrow, more college graduates, more alums of Michigan State University, and leading to us winning championships.
Let's wrap it up with this, man. It's been a banger. Talk to me real quick. Talk to me about what are you guys building at Michigan? What's the goal? Where you want to take it? And then what advice would you give to young guys who kind of want to eventually do what you do? And that's it. We'll cut this thing off.
Yeah, so we're building a championship program. Our goal is to finish number one every year. And I don't know if I can say it any more clear and concisely than that. And for anyone that wants to get, into this crazy world of athletics, the number one thing I can say is you got to be a problem solver. Don't be a solution finder. We got a phrase around here as well. Don't bring me a problem for the solution. Find a way to get it done. If you can be a problem solver and you can have, because the solution's already decided, that's what the head coach wants. So if he says he wants this done, that's the solution. Now we got to backtrack and figure out how to make it happen. Don't come with, a bunch of reasons why it can't. Just figure out how it can. And then you also got to drop the fandom. And that's one of the hardest things, I think, especially for young folks to do, especially when they're, trying to intern or volunteer with us, be student workers, is the fandom's got to be dropped once you step into this building. You can be a fan outside of the building, off hours, on hours, you're here to work. And be mesmerized by being around Coach Tucker, or being around the players, or being in this environment, because we're here to get stuff done. So I think that, and that even has to go with people that graduate and move forward, because we're all fans of our school, but we're also here to work, to win games so that the fans can be happy. So I would say be a problem finder, problem solver. Don't be a solution finder, and then drop the fandom when you're ready to take this leap.
51 minutes in, Spartan Dog on the podcast. That is another edition of the Hood Scout podcast. This was a really good one, Coach. Thank you for spending just about an hour with me. You're generous of your time, and I'm gonna be posting clippers and tag you in it. So, man, keep knocking it out, and I'll be watching from down here in Texas.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Take care.
Bye.